And you have the answer to
Yes, and I am Sam Ormsby. I work in Mayor Walsh's press office, and I am very interested in government relations and municipal work and everything that falls under those categories.
And I should mention before we begin, we'll just hand it over to Sam, that basically this whole cast of characters she brought with her, all Northeastern people, so including Sam. So
Yep.
you graduated when?
2014.
2014, okay. All right, cool, so I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for coming. We're really excited to be here. It's always so nice to be back at Northeastern. I figured I could just start off kind of going through my journey from the time that I've been in Northeastern, all the different co-ops that I've gone through, internships, and then some of my work experience, just so you can get a sense of how I kind of got to the place where I am now in Mayor Walsh's press office. So I started my educational journey actually out at a state school in Western Mass called Westfield State University.
Oh my God, look at that.
Yeah, so I went there for 2 years before I transferred to Northeastern, which I still think was the best decision I ever made. I was really drawn here by the co-op program and the chances that I would have to really learn firsthand in different work environments about what I was interested in and also what I was not interested in. I found that through my different co-ops, it's been really helpful seeing both what I know that I like and what I know that I don't like, which has been tremendously helpful for me. So I graduated here in 2014, which feels like forever ago at this point. And then during my time here, I had the chance to do 2 different co-ops. My first one was actually in former Governor Patrick's press office. You all probably know the name because he's now running for president, which is incredible and very interesting to see that change in political landscape. So I worked there. That's where I really kind of developed my love for public relations. I started in Northeastern as a journalism major. I graduated as a journalism major, and I thought I wanted to be a reporter. I thought I wanted to be potentially on TV or print. So that's kind of where I started off as, and then that co-op kind of changed everything for me. I saw a lot of the work that government can do to help people in that job. Even though I was just kind of an intern off to the side doing press releases and statements and things like that, I really thought that there's a tremendous impact that government can play in people's lives, and I saw that firsthand in a lot of different ways. So that kind of fueled my fire for being interested in public relations and also in government. I had never really dabbled in government before. I didn't really have a clear understanding of what the difference between what local government does versus state versus federal, and I learned a lot in that role about how all those different layers of government intersect and how important they are for people. So that was amazing for me to learn. And then I did my second co-op for a small PR firm here in Boston called Crawford Strategies, which was also amazing. I had a really wonderful time there. It was a small PR operation, which I think gave me a lot of opportunity to learn things that ordinarily might have been assigned to a full-time staffer. It was pretty much just me as the co-op and then the principal of the company just working, tag teaming things all day long. So I had a lot of really cool projects that I worked on there. One of the clients for the company was the Boston Public Market, which probably some of you guys have been to, when they were first getting off the ground. So, it was a different change of pace from working in government to then writing press releases about strawberry season and what new things are out on the market this week. But I loved it, and I thought it was really interesting to see the private side of PR, because it's very different between working for public and government versus working for private. I found that a lot of times in government there's much more reactive stories that are coming your way, where in private it's a lot of pitching stories to reporters and trying to see who will be interested in covering what different topic that we might be working on. So I got a lot of really good different experience in both of my co-ops, which has served me well because now I can say that I've kind of dabbled in both areas. But I knew that I really had a strong calling and passion for working in government, so that led me to my first full-time job out of college, which was working actually for the state again in their housing office, doing communications there. I started off, writing press releases and statements about housing. I was working in their housing office, so we had a lot of different programs that we were working on there. And I kind of got my feet wet into what it means to work full-time as part of, an administration that was doing so much. It was under the Patrick administration, so it was really interesting to be back and working full-time for them. After my experience there, I wasn't there for too long, but I went over to the Martha Coakley campaign for governor a few years ago, Martha Coakley ran against Governor Baker and clearly did not work out in her favor, but it was really interesting to work on a campaign. It's a completely different pace and lifestyle than what I've ever experienced before. I don't know if anyone here has ever worked on a campaign or volunteered or anything. No. It's definitely a very grueling lifestyle in some ways. There's, not much downtime, a lot of hustle that goes into it. People that work on campaigns do it because they really believe in the candidate that they're supporting or whatever the cause might be. So it was really interesting to see how, working all these different change of paces and really being able to figure out what I thought I could see myself doing for a long time. So I loved my experience on the Coakley campaign as well. I learned so much over the 3 months that I was there than I had in any other job experience. I was out staffing events through all different parts of the state. I was responding to press inquiries as they were coming in. There was a lot of different things that I learned in that role that I hadn't really been able to do before, so that was really helpful for me. And then after that, I went on to work for the city of Boston. So I started off working for the former chief of staff. Go ahead.
When did you start?
I started in 2016.
Okay.
2016. Yep. So sorry for the timeline, but I did 2 years working full time in those other roles that I explained. I started off working for the city of Boston under the former chief of staff, Dan Coe, who ran for Congress and is now working at a startup company doing very well. And that I was working in an advisor role, so I was doing a little bit more policy work to kind of see the nitty-gritty of what goes on behind the scenes in terms of government work, how decisions are made, the different priorities of the Walsh administration. So I really found the work to be really exciting and interesting, and I knew that I loved working in government again, and I saw how this time, instead of working at the state government where things tend, in my view, to happen a little more slowly than they would at the local level. The local level, we crank things out left and right. There's always new policies, always new programs, new initiatives, new funding, as opposed to the state level where I found that the work was a little bit more delayed than it would be at the local level. So I really enjoyed getting to see that transition from working from the state to the city. I found that I really loved working for the city, and I knew that I wanted to be back in communications and PR. So when a spot opened up on the mayor's press team, I said, I want that. I'm going to work hard for it. I'm going to apply for it. So I did, and I started off as an associate press secretary in 16, maybe 2017. And then I've worked there ever since. So a lot of my job now, and Emma and Kelly can speak to this too, is working with members of the media every single day on the stories that they're writing. A lot of it can range. Our office handles anything in terms of city departments, so we're kind of the central location for all communications inquiries. We have a lot of help in different departments in housing and transportation and innovation and public safety and kind of anything that you would think of what a city does in terms of its municipal work. We help on the communications end for it. So it's really exciting, and we can see a lot of different inquiries that come in, a lot of different news stories that post, and at the same time as we're responding to reporters' inquiries, we're also trying to proactively tell the news about what we're doing, because if there's not a communications agency or team working to tell the story, people might not know it anyways. So that's a lot of what we do as well, is putting out proactive news. So I'll pause. I don't know if anyone has any questions or anything.
I got a question just to start things off. So just kind of walk us through the sort of the back office process here. So say a reporter calls in and says, last night or something, and says, I want to get a statement from the mayor about the acquittal of Trump's, whatever, and I'm just throwing that out there. But what's the process? How do you guys, what happens next?
Yeah, so a lot of times for those sorts of issues, we know the mayor's values on a lot of these different questions that come. So we'll start by talking to the mayor, see how he wants to respond, and then we'll either have him call the reporter if he wants to have a conversation and has the time to do so, or we'll put together a statement. What I found is in a lot of different ways, it's if one outlet is asking, then a lot of people are going to want to ask. Yeah. So we really try to use social media as a way to share the mayor's message on different things. So if we hear from 5 different TV stations that they want to hear the mayor's response to the State of the Union, We might post something on Twitter, that way everyone can have it all at once. They know exactly what the mayor thinks about it. And we've really used social media, and that's kind of been a new thing for me too, is when I first started off working in PR, social media wasn't even something that was on our radar, to be honest, and now it's kind of transformed to, that's kind of where news breaks first, so that's where we try to jump on the news first as well.
Questions? This is the woman who answers the phone when you call City Hall.
Exactly, yeah.
You should ask her questions about how that works. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's, go ahead.
I mean, I think you touched on this a little bit, but what was it like transitioning from the mindset of a journalist to kind of like the other side?
That's a great question. So I found that having a fundamental understanding of journalism, how it works, has been so helpful for me working in PR, because a lot of times I understand what a reporter is trying to get at when they're asking questions. Sometimes I can even anticipate some of the questions just because I've gone through all of the schooling here that's really prepared me for that. I think it's definitely helpful in terms of both anticipating questions, but also knowing how to successfully pitch stories. So if, for example, if we had news to share about how we've reached more affordable housing in the city, I can share that news all day long, but what's also really helpful, I've found, is that pairing it with a human story about somebody who's been able to be housed in affordable housing, and have that person speak to the reporter. Because we can talk about our news all day long, but it's really the people of Boston that we're doing this work for. So if they can speak about I think there was someone over here who's interested in features or human interest stories. We found that to be a really good way to help tell the work that we're doing, is through the eyes and the perspective of the people of Boston.
So you're kind of on the other side of things now, just to build on what Maya was saying. So what do you think of reporters now that you're kind of on the other side of the equation? How does that sort of play out?
I think it's definitely, as I said, it's really helpful to have an understanding of where they're going with certain stories, and to know kind of fundamentally their angles on things. It's definitely, we work with reporters all day long, so having strong relationships always is helpful. That way I know, Nathalie Pozzo, for example, like we just mentioned, maybe she's interested in education. So if we have news to share on education, I'm going to say, hey, Nathalie, I have this information for you. Do you want to do a story on it? Happy to help facilitate whatever you might need. And then it also becomes really helpful when, if there's news that a reporter might be trying to break, and there's more to the story that I'm not able to share with them on the record, but I have a good relationship with them that I am able to share information off the record to kind of inform their thinking on certain stories. I found that to be really helpful as well. So certainly I have coffee with reporters. I see them every day when I'm out staffing events with the mayor. So it's really great to have strong relationships with as many of them as I can.
So one thing, reporters always want to get, obviously, their questions answered as soon as possible. So as to help these guys a little bit as they move forward, what would be some suggestions that you have for them that would sort of enable you to answer those questions as fast as possible? What tips do you have for them?
That's a great question. So as Emma and Kelly can probably say, because they primarily answer the phones in our office and kind of they're the first people that reporters come into contact with, either via email or by phone. There's a lot of incoming inquiries to our office every day, especially if there's news breaking about the coronavirus, our phones are ringing off the hook. If there's news breaking about a police incident, our phones are ringing off the hook. So the sooner you can reach out to us, the sooner we can start prepping the information that might be needed, the sooner we can get in touch with the mayor to say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? What do you want us to say on this? So I think the sooner the outreach, the better, that we can at least start our internal process, because our team is relatively small. We have 5 full-time staff, but then we also have kind of the content experts that exist in each department. So a lot of times, if somebody had a question on transportation, I might not know the answer to it, but I want to reach out to the person in transportation to get that answer for you as soon as possible. So I think just giving the PR folks a heads up as soon as you can about what it is that you're looking for, being as specific as you can to make sure that we're getting you the information that you're looking for and not just kind of doing a brain dump on everything we think about the topic. We want to get you exactly what it is that you're looking for. I think that's always definitely helpful and much appreciated.
Questions?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, you know, are all media organizations sort of like created equal in the eyes of, you know, your office? Like, if you have someone from the New York Times who's reaching out to you, and you know, maybe someone from like the local Jamaica Plain paper, I guess, who gets the priority there? Does it depend on the content of what they're asking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the mayor very much values the local papers in Boston. We have a concerted effort every single week that we do where we put a local column from the mayor in the local papers. We send it to everyone so they can all receive it and choose to publish it if they'd like. In terms of answering inquiries, it's always everyone is on the same playing field as the others. We don't prioritize one over the other. The only thing that does get prioritized is people's deadlines. A lot of times the local papers will reach out and say, hey, I need this by next Wednesday. Can you get that for me? And that's fine, no problem. An outlet like the New York Times might reach out and say, hey, can I get this by 4 p.m.? So that's the only way that inquiries get prioritized in our office is in terms of deadline, but the mayor very much values the local papers, and we do a lot in terms of outreach and providing them with information.
Just follow up on that.
Yeah.
I should have thrown in student journalists as well, because sometimes when you're a student, you're trying to do a story for class. If you say that, then you're not the priority anymore. I'm not saying with like City Hall. I haven't tried that yet, but
we'd welcome it.
Is that, I guess, like if you have a student journalist reaching out, you know, maybe this isn't going to be in like a publication or anything. It might just be for class. How do you kind of handle those questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I'll share is that I actually came in to Northeastern a couple months ago for Mike Baudette's class. He had a bunch of students. He said, you know, let me put it to you this way. It's either going to be 25 students from my class reaching out to you on any different topic, or you can come in and talk to my class for 1 hour and answer their questions on the spot. And I said, I'll be there. So I went to his class and I did kind of like a live press conference where people just were asking me questions on the record, on the spot, which was very nerve-wracking for me because that was the first time I've ever done it. But it was a really good experience, both for me and I hope also for the students, because they kind of had free reign of what they were able to ask. But in terms of student inquiries generally, we do our best to get back to everyone. What I found a lot of times is it's always appreciated on our end when we know that a journalist, whether it's student or someone from the Globe or the Herald, New York Times, whatever it might be, does their research on the topic before asking. So, you know, we'll likely never hear from a reporter saying, tell me what the city is doing on housing, because that's easily accessible on our city's website, where if a reporter reached out and said, hey, can you tell me about the accessory dwelling unit policy? I don't know where that one stands. Then that's like, okay, great, we're excited to tell you the story. But a lot of times we don't have the time or resources, quite frankly, to do someone's research for them, because we have so much on our website, and the mayor really values transparency and making all of that information available. So our website, you can get lost on it if you want, because there's just so much on there. But that's always very much appreciated on our end, is knowing that's, you know, any reporter has done their research on the topic.
So you mentioned the local papers around Boston. One of the issues, obviously, in the world of journalism is this sort of hollowing out of a lot of these papers as
Yeah.
people get laid off, and frankly, some of these big chains have moved in and bought these places
Right.
and kind of zombified them.
Yeah.
Do you guys sort of see that in some fashion reflected at City Hall, and that we realize we're not getting calls from these papers anymore, we're not getting calls from reporters? Or do you see it in other ways?
Yeah, we definitely have. There's certainly some outlets that we used to, you know, send information to regularly, we would hear from that, you know, now it's just send any information to this general news desk, which we hardly ever see anything come to fruition. So it's definitely sad to kind of see the evolution of local journalism kind of go in that direction, certainly as somebody who graduated as a journalist. But But that said, there's also kind of new outlets and new markets coming into play. Like I mentioned, social media. I feel like for a lot of local newspapers, I think they're realizing too that that's where a lot of people get their news from. So they're kind of going in that direction with how they share some of their news. So it's definitely something that we see and notice on our end. But we try to stay in touch with, any changing markets and new people we need to reach out to and new ways to share our news. That's something that we're always looking for too is, just sending out a press releases might not reach all the people that we want it to reach, and it might not even reach the people of Boston who, at the end of the day, is our main focus on who we get this information to. So we're always trying to think creatively about how we can kind of tell our story collectively as a city and how we can share the news. The mayor over the last year, I don't know if anyone here has a Medium page, but we found that to be a really useful way to kind of tell stories in the mayor's voice. So he did a Medium post, I should say, about how he was a child with cancer, and just kind of telling through his vision and his firsthand perspective of what that meant for him, the challenges that he faced, how he was held back in school. And that's actually become one of our top read Medium posts, because that's not anything you would ever send out in a press release, but that's one way we can kind of tell the story of who the mayor is and how at the end of the day he's just kind of your average person who cares a lot about the city and in my opinion is doing a great job leading it, but it really humanizes him and tells stories that people might not otherwise know. Another Medium post we did from him was just kind of telling about his first job. I don't know if anyone knows this, but the mayor was a donut finisher at Dunkin' Donuts as his first job. So yes, very humbling. But a lot of people really like to hear that stuff too, because it again just kind of shows that he hasn't always been the mayor. He's had his own struggles with alcoholism. He's had his own struggles with cancer as a child. But here he is as mayor of the city of Boston, and on our end, it's kind of our work and our job to kind of tell what he's doing as mayor, what we're doing as a city, and how we're kind of trying to move everyone forward.
Just to kind of follow up on that, we were talking about sort of news outlets. Are you seeing any sort of new news outlets springing up that you're like, oh, these guys are doing a pretty good job? And also, who do you sort of see as like the top reporters out there that you look at and say, this guy's really plugged in and is doing a really good job writing about the city?
Oh, that's a really good question. So we at City Hall have a couple of reporters who are kind of embedded in City Hall. They have an office there, they have desk space there, so we work with them regularly on any news kind of coming out of City Hall just because they're the go-to people. Right now it's Milton Valencia at the Globe.
My old buddy.
Yeah, Milton. We work with him a lot. I will, yeah. We have Sean Cotter at the Herald. There's also a couple other Herald reporters. I think Alexi Cohan is one. And I think Aaron Tiernan is the other. So we have some people. Do you know them?
I know Sean and Aaron. I worked with them in the Ledger before they went to the Herald.
Oh, great, yeah. So they're all based out of City Hall. So we work with them, I would say most regularly, because they're kind of always checking in on what's going on, what's the news of today. We work with them a lot. The mayor also has a very active schedule that he keeps. Where he kind of goes out in the community for different events, a ribbon cutting event for a new business, visiting, a new housing development. So we staff all of the mayor's events. So we always work with reporters when they come to ask the mayor questions. At the end of events, we usually do some sort of press scrum so people can put a microphone in the mayor's face and kind of ask him whatever they want to ask about. So we have, I think, we work pretty much every day with a whole range of different reporters. There's definitely some, that we work with more than others, but I'm not going to pick favorites, but we do work with the ones out of City Hall the most.
What about news sites? It has been a period of huge innovation. Are you seeing any news sites that have sort of popped up that have caught your eye, that are doing a good job in the city or even the state level?
I'm trying to think. And feel free to jump in if you guys have any ideas. One that comes to mind is kind of, and this is just more of a local example, but the evolution of, I'm going to mess this up, the Boston Courant to the Boston Guardian to, they kind of have rebranded themselves and kind of taken a new approach in how they report.
I don't even know what are they called now?
I think it's the Boston Guardian now,
okay.
But they were something else before, and I think even before that they had a different name. In terms of new sites, I don't know. I'm trying to think if anything's coming to mind.
I would encourage anyone who has any interest in local news, and you're looking for a job, start your own news site in your local town or start a vertical or something. It's so easy to start something now, and you'd be surprised how quickly you can get traction if you're really passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. And one of the outlets that I've seen kind of the most transition in terms of reporters that used to reach out has been the Wicked Locals.
Yeah.
They were ones that we would reach out to all the time. We would always hear from them, and there's kind of been a little bit of a drop-off in the incoming from them, which has been interesting. I don't know. I think they might be Gatehouse Media, but
I'm not a fan of Gatehouse.
yeah, that's been one of the ones that I've seen the most transition with. In terms of new ones coming online, nothing's really coming to mind. I don't know if anyone here has any new outlets you've been covering or researching, but I'll keep thinking about that
I
one.
was just thinking, this came up yesterday, and I have not seen this myself, but I was talking to Professor Dan Lothian, some of you people know, and he lives in Wellesley, and some guy just, it was almost kind of a joke, and he started a newsletter called Swellesley something or other. It's a joke people use about Wellesley because they're all a bunch of swells out there.
The Swellesley Report?
The Swellesley Report, is that what it's called?
Yeah, they're like, I'm from Wellesley, they're like famous there.
Yeah, so and apparently this guy just started it out as like emailing people about,
So funny.
yeah, just send me tips and stuff, and then he started including a few ads, and now apparently Dan's saying he's thinking about quitting his job and just doing it full time.
Wow.
So it's one of those things where it starts off as kind of just a little hobby or a passion project, and all of a sudden it's turned into a real gig. And partly it's because a lot of these news outlets, like the ones owned by Gatehouse, they're just not investing in news, and they're pulling back, leaving this huge void. So if you have some passion, you can jump right into these places. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's
still time for you, but
That's a great point. I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity that exists. We follow more blogs than we ever have before. I would say, and definitely I think, as I mentioned before, we started Medium because we thought that was a great tool that we've seen others using as a way to share their news. I know there's some people that have Medium posts to write their news stories, things like that. So we're trying to keep an eye on all these different new platforms that we can utilize. But it's really interesting to see kind of the move to still digital and social media.
other questions?
Yeah.
Does the mayor still read a print newspaper?
He does. He gets them delivered.
He does?
Yes.
Office or to his home?
I think to his personal home, but we also get them in the office too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Globe or Herald?
both.
Both?
Yeah, we have a whole range of paper. We have the Globe, Herald, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, all the local papers come in too, so.
So he hasn't pulled a President Trump and banned one of the papers from his office?
Oh, no.
Right.
The mayor, actually, he loves talking to the press, almost to a point that it makes me a little bit nervous because he loves sharing his thoughts on everything. He's never shied away from a question. There's times where, he'll reach out to either myself or my colleague Laura and say, hey, just so you know, I just did a radio interview on WBZ this morning. Thanks, bye. And that's how I find out about interviews that have happened sometimes. So he loves talking to the press. For better or for worse, he has a lot of regularly scheduled interviews that he does. So last night he was on his monthly segment on WBZ Radio with Dan Ray. We do WGBH with Jim and Marjorie every month. And we're just starting to do a regular appearance on BUR Radio Boston. So he every single day we're scheduling him for one interview or another. He talks to press, I would say, at least a couple times each day. So he's very open and accessible, and he loves talking to media. So it keeps us very much on our toes.
I think that's one of the most exciting things that I've learned working in this office, that the press office tries to reach out to every form of media, whether it's local or it's radio with these monthly segments, or the Globe and the Herald because they're the biggest ones in Boston. So I thought it was really cool that they value every different type because they want to reach as many people as possible, because ultimately the point is to reach the individuals who live in Boston by way of the press. So I think it's a really important relationship to have a conversation with every single platform possible. And
Yeah.
the press office and the mayor definitely do that.
Other questions? So you worked in the governor's office and and obviously the mayor's office. So kind of what's the difference between them? And I'm just curious if it's a personality thing or just a systemic thing, the way they're structured. What are the differences between like the governor's press office and the mayor's?
That's a great question. So when I worked in the governor's press office, I was an intern, so I wasn't as involved in kind of the higher level communication strategies and decisions that were made. When I worked for the state's housing office, it was interesting to see kind of, not like we were siloed in a way, but we didn't have the full range of information that we do in the mayor's office, where now I know what the Boston Police are up to, I know what the Boston Transportation is up to, I know what the Arts Department is up to. So I love that aspect where kind of you get to dabble in a lot of different topics that I ordinarily wouldn't get the chance to know about. And then you kind of find the areas that you are interested in. I really love housing because I kind of have a little bit of a background in it with my work at the state. And then other people on my team, you know, my colleague Audrey really enjoys transportation and technology, so she kind of handles those different buckets. My colleague Anna is from Venezuela, and she loves the immigrant focus issue, so she kind of handles all of those questions for our office. So it's interesting to see kind of just the dynamic between working in the mayor's office versus the governor's office. I'm sure that they dealt with the same range of departments that they have, and just kind of keeping the lines of communication open, which is something that we always try to do to have just a good exchange of information. Yeah.
How do you make sure that you don't miss anything? In terms of, are you always plugged in like 24/7? Are you next to your phone in case something happens? Or?
Yes. So I don't have my phone on me, and I'm having a little bit of anxiety about it. I'm just kidding. No, this is the longest that I've been without checking my phone.
Because on purpose, I just forgot it.
No, it's in my purse over there.
Oh, okay.
But no, yeah.
It's there, okay.
I have it. No, but I definitely have to stay plugged in. A lot of times, the job that I have now is certainly not 9 to 5. There's reporters that reach out. I mean, you guys all know the news cycle is 24/7. There's not really a moment of downtime. So last night, I think we got an inquiry from one of the TV stations at 9:30 at night saying, hey, this is for the 10 o'clock news. Can you get me a statement by then? Thankfully, we already had one prepared, so it was just a matter of shipping it off. But
Was this about the impeachment?
I'm trying to think of what that one was on.
I can't. What would have happened at 9:30 at night?
I think it was something to do with the BPS budget that was released last night.
Oh, okay.
It was like one of those. They just wanted a statement from the mayor on his thoughts on the budget. So it's interesting to see kind of how, you know, our team, we have one press team. We don't have, you know, the morning news team. We don't have the afternoon news team. We don't have the evening news team. We're kind of all the city's got in terms of the timing of it. So we try our best to be responsive to the people who reach out at 5 in the morning for the drive time broadcast. We try to be responsive to the people who reach out at night for the evening news. It's a matter of being very organized, I think, because, you know, keeping track of all the different deadlines that you have to meet. You never want anything to fall through the cracks. We always try to get back to everyone. The mayor does not like seeing in the newspaper, the mayor's office didn't respond to requests for comment. That is the worst thing in our eyes. So we try really hard to get back to everyone as fast as we can. But yeah, it's definitely just staying kind of on top of the news, knowing, you know, if I see this breaking news about the second case of coronavirus in Boston, I know that I need to right now create a statement from the mayor about what that means, what are the public safety implications. So kind of just knowing and anticipating what questions we know are going to come in to try to jump on the ball as soon as we're able to, I think helps with dealing with a lot of the immediateness of what the news demands.
Do you know the mayor well enough so that, say, okay, the second case of coronavirus is found, could you basically write it for him and then say, this is what I'm thinking, or do you talk to him first?
Yeah, that certainly comes with time. I've worked in the mayor's office for, I think, almost 4 years now, so I feel very comfortable in knowing his position on things and knowing his general feedback on how he'd like to respond to things and also his values. So that's definitely come with getting to know him as a person and, you know, having responded to a lot of different issues at this point. I know his general take on things, so that's been very helpful. At first, I wouldn't know, you know, his thought on, you know, any given issue versus the other. So it took me a while at first to kind of get to know how he approaches the media, how the amount of information that he wants to put in statements, the amount that he wants to put on background, things like that. So it's definitely been a learning experience, and that's something that I think you guys know because they come out into the community with us when we go to events, so they get to kind of see it too, is how he talks to reporters, and knowing that he likes sharing as much as we can just to tamp down fears when needed, but also reassure our values on certain things. So it comes, I think, with time and getting to know the person.
And just like a follow-up within the same thing that we're discussing, if it's a sensitive topic, do you have to call the mayor and be like, this is what we're thinking? Or is there like a guidebook, or is there a hierarchy on who decides that, yeah, this is what we're gonna release? Or
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of times, if it's a sensitive issue, we'll want to be in touch with, say, the cabinet chief. If it's a health-related issue, we'll want to make sure that the chief of health and human services feels good about what we're releasing before we even bring it to the mayor. Because a lot of times he'll say, great, that sounds good, but have you checked with this person, just to make sure that it's accurate, that it includes all the information that we needed to, we're not forgetting anything. So there's definitely a little bit of, I wouldn't call it a hierarchy, but it's just double checking to make sure that we're taking the right approach in what information is being shared. I definitely do talk to the mayor about certain things. There's certain sensitive topics and just things that I know he's really interested in that he'll want to see before it gets released. So I'll either go down to his office, or I'll talk to him when we're out at an event, or I'll give him a call if I need to. So we definitely have a really, I would say, kind of close relationship in that sense, because we're always in communication about different things that are publishing. So, yeah.
Now, in newsrooms, where I spent decades, so there's basically, you have daily meetings. We're trying to anticipate, first of all, talk about what happened yesterday and what you're going to do about it, but also looking ahead, trying to anticipate what's happening next. You kind of have the same kind of process where you meet in the morning or something and just try to sort of figure out what the news of the day will be.
Yeah, we don't necessarily try to figure out what the news of the day will be. We track the news every single day. We do like a kind of internal clip list of just, here are all the big stories that have posted, here's what you need to know, just so that everyone in terms of our team knows what the potential questions might be if the mayor is out in the community. Obviously this week a lot of it's on impeachment, it's on State of the Union response, so we know that those are going to be some questions that will come his way. So we definitely try to anticipate as much as we can. We do weekly check-ins with our team, both on Mondays and Fridays, to just kind of go over what do we have on our internal calendar in terms of proactive news we want to share. And then we're always in touch about when stories post, day of, what do we need to get the mayor talking points on? He might not know about this issue that was just posted in the newspaper. Let me make sure I get him a heads up, just in case he's asked out at a community event about, what's your response to this story that posted? We want to make sure that he at least is aware of it and knows what to say in case he's asked. Is anyone here interested in public relations or PR? Or done any co-ops or anything in that? Yeah?
I worked at a PR firm for
Oh, great.
My first co-op, actually.
Nice. Which one is it?
McNeil, Gray, and Rice. It's downtown.
Oh, great. Yeah, I know the name.
By the
Awesome.
Wax Museum.
Yep.
I was a communications co-op, the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Reputation.
Oh, awesome. So that was is that still under Housing and Economic Development technically?
Yes.
Great. I worked, that was the office that I worked in at the state, so I worked closely with them. How did you like it?
It was great. It was great learning experience.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear.
I took a PR class. It was actually the Journalism Collective. I don't know if you had John Kofol.
I didn't, no.
Yeah, but he was good. And he also had a similar route where he I think majored in journalism here. And then he started his own PR company after working at the Globe. And so it was nice having someone who was on both sides, and I learned a lot about how we the relationship we should try to foster.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so make it a partnership.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's definitely important, is having those relationships.
Actually, going off that question, there how there's beat reporters who report on the city or things like that. So what sort of journalists do you just kind of work better with? I know you talked about coming done with research, but what sort of journalists are you I like working with them, and I like having this relationship with them? What sort of journalist comes to mind?
I think I can describe kind of generally what I always appreciate in a journalist, if that helps.
Yeah.
I love having relationships with journalists where they're very upfront about what they're looking for, what their story is going to be. That way, I never feel like I'm caught off guard if I'm providing information that it turns out is not useful to what they're actually writing about. a lot of times on our end, we do our best to put our best foot forward in terms of what we're doing as a city and the work that we're doing. So I always appreciate, even if it's off the record, even if, it's not for any sort of publication, I have relationships with reporters where they'll call me and say, hey, Sam, I know the city isn't technically responsible for any given issue, but I'm looking to talk to somebody who can tell me this specific information. Who can I be in touch with on that? And I'll say, hey, I don't know anyone at the city, but I know that this organization is involved with that. You should give them a call. So kind of having that relationship, even if it's outside of what I can do in my role, is, I think, always appreciated. And I'll do the same. I'll say, hey, reporter, I don't know who at your outlet is interested in this topic, but I have this really great story that I want to tell. Can you help me find that person? And they'll do that. So I think, it goes both in terms of stories that are being written, but also how we can kind of help each other tell the stories that we each have to share. It goes a long way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a good rule of thumb when you're writing stories, is to be as upfront as you possibly can be with the people you're dealing with when you're trying to get a reaction. Say, I'm writing a story tomorrow, this is what it's going to say, even if it's bad news, and just say, I'm trying to get a reaction from the mayor or whomever, and they have a much better idea what's going on. And frankly, you don't feel like someone hit you from behind, right? So
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it happens, but and sometimes there's reasons for not telling people, for competitive reasons or whatever. But I always, as the older I got and the more experience I got, it was much just easier. Look, I'm writing a story tomorrow. I'm going to kill you, frankly, but I do want to get a reaction. And sometimes, as you talk it through, it may end up changing the story a little bit,
right?
But you definitely get a reaction. And I think the person would respect you. At least they have a clue what's going to happen when they wake up the next morning and grab the paper or look online.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree anymore. There's definitely times when we know that a story is coming that's not going to be positive for us, but we always appreciate the opportunity to share the facts and figures that we have on that specific topic, to at least make sure that the story is factual, no matter how much it's negative for us. It's always challenging for us when stories are posted that have information that's wrong. That's one of our biggest pet peeves on our end, because then it's a matter of trying to chase down the reporter to give them the right information, where if we had just known off the bat what exactly they were looking for, we can provide it up front. So, yeah.
Do you ever have situations where you feel that the mayor's office was not treated fairly in a story, and how do you deal with that when that does happen?
Yeah, there's definitely times that does happen. I think the way that we deal with it is, all we can do on our end is share our information, the facts, the figures, the mayor's stance. How that information is taken by a reporter is kind of their own prerogative. So a lot of that just comes down to having an open exchange with the reporter, where if they understand where we're coming from, that's great. If they have the facts and figures they need, that's great. If there's been times when we've provided a wealth of information that never even was included in a story. So there's times when, I'll call the reporter after and say, hey, I know you were working on this and you asked for all this information and you decided to run with the information that was provided by a different source that's actually wrong. So just want to have a conversation about what we can do moving forward to make sure that we get it to you in the time that you need, that we get it to you in the way that you need, so that way you can include it in your story next time. So I think it again kind of comes back to having a relationship where I feel comfortable making that call to a reporter, and they feel comfortable telling me why the information might have been excluded, why they went with other information over ours, things like that.
Anything else? Any last questions? Once, twice, thrice. Well, thank you very much, Sam. That was great.
Great, yeah, thank you.
Awesome.